Welcome to the deep dive. Ready for something pretty wild?
Always.
Okay, good. Because today we're diving into the world of HAARP.
HAARP.
Yep, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Picture this. Giant antennas in the Alaskan wilderness, beaming powerful radio waves straight up into the sky.
Sounds like the start of a sci-fi movie.
Right. But, as we'll see, it might be more science fact than fiction. Our guide for this deep dive is a 1995 book called Angels Don't Play This HAARP: Advances in Tesla Technology. The authors, Dr. Nick Begich and Jeane Manning, really get into some pretty fascinating, maybe even unsettling claims about what HAARP can do.
Like what? Control the weather.
Oh, we're getting to that. But first, we got to understand what we're dealing with. So think of HAARP as this massive radio station, right? But instead of blasting out tunes, it's focusing energy up into the ionosphere.
Okay, the ionosphere, that's an electrically charged layer way up high in Earth's atmosphere.
Exactly. And HAARP essentially heats it up. It's a process called ionospheric heating.
So it's kind of like a giant microwave oven for the sky.
Yeah, kind of. So why do we want to heat up the ionosphere? Well, officially, HAARP is all about research, improving communication, studying the aurora borealis, that kind of thing.
Sounds pretty harmless so far.
Right. But the book also points to some military documents that suggest a different angle. They hint at the potential for weaponizing the ionosphere.
Weaponizing the sky. Okay, now you've got my attention.
Yeah, it gets wild. Think about it disrupting enemy communications while keeping your own up and running, creating atmospheric disturbances to mess with radar systems, maybe even manipulating weather patterns.
No, that's straight out of a sci-fi thriller.
Okay.
But I gotta ask, what does all of this have to do with Nikola Tesla? I thought he was all about clean energy.
Good point. Tesla was a visionary, totally ahead of his time when it came to energy. But his work with electromagnetism also laid the groundwork for some of the technology we're talking about. And that brings us to Bernard Eastland.
Who's that?
He's the physicist behind the core HAARP patents, and his work was heavily influenced by Tesla's ideas.
Patents. So this is where things start to get really interesting, right?
Oh, absolutely. Eastland's patents outline some truly mind-boggling stuff. I'm talking nuclear-sized explosions without radiation. He called them tectonic weapons. Then there are power beaming systems to send energy wirelessly across huge distances.
Wireless energy, like beaming power from one side of the planet to the other, no cables or anything.
Exactly, and that's not all. He also envisioned over-the-horizon radar, detecting missiles with nuclear warheads, disrupting enemy communications on a massive scale. You name it.
So controlling the ionosphere could basically give you insane power over communication, energy, even warfare.
That's the idea. And to make things even more interesting, those patents were bought up by Raytheon.
Raytheon, the defense contractor.
The one and only. Makes you wonder about the real goals behind HAARP, right?
It does. Is it pure science like they claim, or something more?
That's what we're going to dig into. This is already shaping up to be a wild ride. So one of the most controversial things about HAARP is this whole weather control thing.
Yeah, the book claims HAARP can be used to manipulate weather patterns, potentially on a huge scale, like across entire continents.
Continents. So we're not talking about making it rain in the desert here. We're talking about controlling the weather for entire hemispheres.
That's what they're suggesting.
Yeah.
And when you think about how Earth's systems are all interconnected, well, it's not as crazy as it might seem at first. The ionosphere plays a key role in bouncing radio waves around, and it interacts with Earth's magnetic field and how energy flows through the atmosphere.
So messing with the ionosphere with HAARP could trigger a chain reaction, impacting weather on a global level.
That's the theory. And the book even points to historical projects like Project Skyfire and Project Storm Fury, where they explored rainmaking and hurricane manipulation.
Wow, so using weather as a weapon isn't a new idea.
Nope, been around for a while. And remember, this book is from almost 30 years ago. Tech has come a long way since then, so think what HAARP could be capable of now.
Gives you chills, doesn't it? This is seriously mind-blowing stuff. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're picking up where we left off, exploring HAARP and those concerns about its potential impact.
Right, like we were saying in part one, HAARP can heat up the ionosphere. That opens up some amazing possibilities, but also raises questions about the potential consequences.
Yeah, intended or unintended. And what really struck me about Angels Don't Play This HAARP is the way they bring those concerns to life. You know, I mean, the scientists they interview, they use these vivid analogies to really drive home the risks of messing with such a complex system.
Yeah, like one analogy that really stayed with me was comparing the ionosphere to a delicate soap bubble.
A soap bubble.
Yeah, physicist Elizabeth Rasher, who's quoted in the book, she worried that HAARP's energy could, disrupt the ionosphere's stability, make it pop, essentially.
Wow, that's a powerful image, isn't it? Makes you think about how fragile our planet's protection really is. Oh, and another scientist, David Yarrow, he compared HAARP to a microwave knife slicing through the ionosphere.
Yeah, he talked about how Earth is constantly rotating, right? So HAARP's beam wouldn't just create a little hole, it would be more like a long tear, an incision as it sweeps across.
Oh, wow. So not just a puncture, but a giant gash across the sky.
Pretty much. And then he goes on to describe Earth's magnetic field as this intricate web, with HAARP acting like a microwave finger poking at it, like disrupting this delicate balance.
Okay, so we have the soap bubble, the microwave knife, and now a spider web. These scientists weren't holding back. They saw HAARP as a real threat.
And their concerns weren't limited to just the ionosphere and the magnetic field.
Wow.
Daniel Winter, another physicist in the book, he brought up this fascinating concept. He called Earth's natural electromagnetic field a kind of information bloodstream for the planet.
Information bloodstream. Okay, now that's a new one. What does that even mean?
Well, his idea is that this electromagnetic field, the one generated by Earth's core and reaches far into space, it basically synchronizes the rhythms of life on Earth.
You mean like a force that connects everything, like influencing how birds migrate or how plants grow?
Exactly. It's this subtle but vital force. And Winter was worried that HAARP's transmissions, operating at such high frequencies, could disrupt that balance. Imagine the consequences for everything.
So we're messing with the planet's communication system without even understanding the language.
Yeah.
And as we discussed earlier, the ionosphere is super active near the poles where HAARP is.
Exactly. Which makes it even more unpredictable. The book quotes someone from Alaska, Barbara Zakur, who compared the scientists behind HAARP to boys playing with a sharp stick.
Oh, I like that. Poking a sleeping bear to see what happens. It really captures that feeling of reckless experimentation, doesn't it?
Totally. Especially when you consider the claims about manipulating weather.
Yeah, like Eastland's idea that HAARP could control weather, even on a hemispheric scale. How would that even work? What's the connection between the ionosphere and weather patterns?
Well, the book talks about weather as an electrical system, and the ionosphere has a huge influence on that. They give examples like power line harmonic resonance. That's where man-made electrical stuff causes charged particles to fall from the Van Allen belts.
The Van Allen belts, those are the belts of charged particles that surround Earth, right?
Right, and when those particles fall, they can trigger ice crystals and rain clouds.
Ah, so the book is saying HAARP could do the same thing, but on a much bigger scale.
Exactly. They also talk about nonlinear effects, where a small input of energy can create a massive output.
Okay, so a tiny nudge in the ionosphere could set off a chain reaction that leads to, like, a hurricane.
It's like the butterfly effect, but on a planetary scale. And there's a scientist quoted who compared it to acupuncture. Stimulating certain points on the body triggers all these effects, right? Well, maybe manipulating specific spots in the ionosphere could trigger these massive chain reactions in the weather system.
Whoa, okay, this is starting to feel a little too sci-fi for me. Are we seriously saying HAARP could cause droughts, floods, hurricanes?
Well, it's definitely something to think about, right? It highlights the potential for massive consequences when you mess with a system as complex as our climate.
And the ethical implications are huge. If HAARP could actually control weather, what's stopping someone from using it as a weapon?
It's a scary thought. Imagine creating a drought to cripple an enemy or unleashing a storm to destroy their infrastructure.
That's terrifying, and this book really stresses the need for open and honest conversations about HAARP, right?
Definitely. We need to weigh the potential benefits against the risks and make sure we're not sleepwalking into a disaster.
Before we move on, can we circle back to those independent scientists? They were really worried about the lack of transparency surrounding HAARP, weren't they? And all the potential for unintended consequences.
Oh, absolutely. They felt that the public wasn't getting the full story about the risks, and they really pushed for independent oversight. They wanted to make sure HAARP was used ethically and responsibly.
So more caution, less rushing into experiments that could have disastrous consequences.
Exactly. They wanted a better understanding of how the ionosphere, the magnetic field, and all of life on Earth are connected before we start messing with things on a large scale.
It's a good reminder that just because we can do something doesn't mean we should, right? Especially when it comes to something as powerful as this.
And remember, we're talking about a book from 1995. Think how much more advanced this technology must be now.
Wow. Yeah. That's a little scary, actually. It just shows how important it is to stay informed and to question what we're told.
Totally. We can't just be passive. We have to engage, educate ourselves, and hold those in power accountable.
Welcome back to the deep dive. As we wrap things up with HAARP, I gotta say, this technology, it's like a crossroads, you know? So much potential, but so many unknowns, so many scary possibilities.
Yeah, no doubt. From ionospheric heating to weather control, even mind control, it's been a wild ride.
It really has. And while some of the claims in Angels Don't Play This HAARP, they might sound like pure science fiction, but when you look at the historical context they provide, it's like, whoa, maybe not so far-fetched after all. They talk about these military projects, Skyfire and Storm Fury, that show a real interest in weather modification.
Oh yeah, those projects, they go way back like mid-20th century. They were trying to make it rain with cloud seeding, even messing with hurricanes. It shows that the whole idea of using weather as a weapon, it's not new.
So it wasn't just some crazy theory, the military was actually trying to do it.
Yep, which makes you wonder about HARP, right? Maybe it's more than just scientific research, like they say. If they were already thinking about controlling the weather back then, well, imagine what they could do now.
It's kind of mind-blowing and a little scary, too, to be honest. And it all comes back to those scientists in the book and how worried they were about the unintended consequences. It's not just what we know about HAARP, but what we don't know.
Right, like messing with something as complex as the Earth's atmosphere. They had those powerful images, remember? The ionosphere as a soap bubble that could pop. The Earth's magnetic field like a spider web being poked with a microwave finger. It really highlights how fragile things are, how easily we could disrupt everything.
And not just the weather, right? I mean, we're talking ocean currents, animal migration, the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. Angels Don't Play This HARP really makes you think about how interconnected everything on this planet is. You mess with one thing, like the ionosphere, and who knows what could happen. Could be a domino effect.
Like playing with fire and not knowing how big the fire could get. And the book really hammers home this lack of transparency around HAARP.
Oh, totally. They argue that the public needs to know about the risks, that there should be independent scientists looking over their shoulders, making sure everything's ethical, responsible.
Yeah, we're talking about something that could potentially impact everyone on the planet, right?
Yeah.
We can't just take their word for it.
Exactly. And remember, this book is from 1995. Tech moves so fast, HARP's probably even more powerful now.
Whoa, that's a thought, isn't it? But hey, maybe it could be used for good too, right? Clean energy, new ways to communicate, understanding the universe better.
For sure. But the potential for things to go wrong is huge too.
Yeah, no doubt. It's kind of like a Pandora's box, I guess. Angels Don't Play This HAARP really makes you think. We got to stay informed, question what we're told, and hold those in power accountable.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and watch. We got to be part of this conversation, educate ourselves, and make sure technology serves us, not the other way around.
Well said. That wraps up our deep dive into HAARP. Hope you found it as fascinating and as thought-provoking as we did. Keep those questions coming, keep searching for answers, and never stop exploring. See you next time.